debate. Next up, Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome to each of the witnesses. Thank you for being here. The focus of this hearing is innovation, and ensuring that our competition policies drive innovation is critical. But as Professor Alford notes, innovation is just one of the often hidden casualties in antitrust law. Like him, I support the consumer welfare standard. Too often, however, that standard has focused exclusively on price and output effects to the exclusion of things like quality and innovation. The same anti-competitive forces that can stifle technological innovation can also stifle ideas and views that the dominant players disagree with and want to root out. So as I look at it, when we think about how we protect innovation, we also need to look more broadly at how we protect people and companies who dare to think differently. I want to go down the row. Does everyone here agree that it can constitute an antitrust and competition harm when dominant players use their dominance to censor individuals who think differently or just those who disagree with them? Ms. Moss.
Thank you, Senator Cruz, for the question. I think the answer to the question in a nutshell is antitrust is very good at addressing some problems in the digital business ecosystems because they are directly related to competition or a lack thereof. The problem we see with the digital ecosystems is they raise a number of dramatically impactful problems, social problems, political problems, economic problems. I think free speech on the platforms and censorship is one of those problems that may not be that well addressed by antitrust enforcement, but should certainly be addressed by another appropriate public policy tool.
Mr. Harmon.
I think I generally agree with that. I think it depends on the situation and the financial interests of the platform.
Mr. Megowski.
I think the central problem here is that there's a lack of user freedom. Users do not have the ability to switch platforms if they no longer agree with the platform or if they want to try a new service. There's a lack of interoperability and data portability. I think that the American Innovation and Choice Online Act goes to great lengths to make this a much more level playing field.
Thank you. Professor Alford.
So, I will echo some of the previous comments. I think there's a lot of things that are happening with respect to these big tech companies, and only some of them relate to antitrust law. So, for example, issues of censorship, issues of addiction, issues of mental health and wellness, a lot of those issues don't directly relate to antitrust issues. They are very serious concerns, but it's difficult to fit those square pegs into the round hole of antitrust. But I do think that you can say that to the extent that censorship constitutes harm to the quality of the experience for the consumer, then it would be a colorable claim that you could make under the antitrust laws. I would also add that to the extent these big tech companies say that they do not discriminate against conservatives, and they can show that that's a misrepresentation, then they also could be liable under the consumer protection laws.
Ms. Hine.
I have to agree with most of the other panelists that antitrust is probably not the right thing to address freedom of speech and censorship. I do think, though, that critical voices and new ideas are the lifeblood of innovation, and that should not be stifled.
So again, to each of you, when we tackle issues of competition and innovation, should we think broadly about what it means to innovate? That is, think beyond simply technological innovation and look more broadly at innovation that serves a clear market demand, a consumer demand. Mr. Mikowski talked about consumer freedom. One example of innovation to serve a market demand is Parler, which was created to serve a demand in the face of widespread censorship of conservatives. Parler was created, and then Google and Apple and Amazon all used market power to coordinate to block the competitor and drive them out of business. Ms. Moss.
Thank you. I think where competition becomes very important in this particular debate, and certainly free speech is a backbone of underlying democratic principles which support a market-based system, is to encourage competition and entry by smaller, innovative rivals in spaces that are dominated by large platforms, regardless of their political inclinations or not. The mechanics are such that kicking off smaller rivals for whatever reason, limiting users' ability to switch and not be locked into a particular system, all contribute to a diminution in the number of voices that are out there in the free speech context. As Roger pointed out as well, and others have said, antitrust would have a hard time getting at that problem through methods of deterrence and how to remedy that type of issue. But certainly more competition is always better in that context. But I think, as I said earlier, we need other public policy tools to address some of these stickier issues.
Mr. Harmon?
Yes, I think we should be thinking about innovation as removing the barriers, especially in the big tech space, removing the barriers that the dominant platforms have put in place to protect themselves, so that innovators, as they're at the very first stage, at the finance stage, at a mature stage, they are not bound by the strictures that these companies put in place.
Mr. Mikowski?
Senator Blumenthal mentioned earlier that there are not just considerations in the App Store here in the United States, but also internationally, that foreign governments have taken action in removing apps from the App Store there. I think it all comes down to the ability for people to decide for themselves which apps they would like to use. And as of right now, people do not have that freedom to choose on platforms like the iPhone.
Professor Alford?
Yeah, so in my prepared remarks, I discussed quality fixing in addition to price fixing. And you and Senator Lee have both talked about the Parler example in which Google, Apple, and Amazon have kicked off Parler. And to the extent that one could show an agreement between Google, Apple, and Amazon to raise the same identical quality concerns with respect to the reasons for why they decided to kick Parler off of their platforms, I think that there could be a quality fixing argument. And as I suggested in my opening remarks, I'm surprised that there's not more subpoenas or investigations with respect to big tech companies when they are engaging in quality fixing, such as let's develop a common position, let's get on the same page about this privacy concern or this desire and effort to squelch conservative voices. To the extent there is potential evidence of quality fixing, then I think there should be investigations of that.
And Ms. Hine?
I think the other panelists have given you good input on that. I am not an expert on which apps to remove from the App Store or not.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Senator Cruz. I have a few additional questions here.